how the different federations are doing. If you see, for example, all the way to your right of the screen, and you count 1, 2, 3, 4, you see, a quite high bar with a lot of blue and a little bit of yellow at the top. This is handball, right? What it tells us that as a size, the size is huge. That is, they have a lot of athletes, they have a lot of clubs, blah, blah, blah. They have national teams, they represent to the various international competitions, the country, and so on and so on. But they don't do much, and they do not have successes either. Governance-wise, okay, just about, I wouldn't say great, but as you can see, this federation, handball federation, they will be getting state funding pretty much, quite a lot, out of the 35%, but all the other 3 criteria will not be very, very, very favorable for them, right? So you have other more balanced, if you like, federations. If you see somewhere in the middle, there is the water sports, where they have a small size, they do a lot of things, they have a lot of successes, and governance-wise are quite okay. There is the volleyball as well, just in the middle. This blue, the highest bar. This is the volleyball, where they have, size-wise, they are quite big. They do a few things. They do not have successes. As you can see, this gray part of the bar is not that big, and governance-wise, are not bad at all. So this is perhaps a good example of a big federation that is doing okay but doesn't have successes. And because it doesn't have successes, the amount of money that will be assigned for the successes will be limited. But they will get from the other 3 criteria. Now, some takeaway messages, right? This assessment using the multi-criteria approach is meant to guide towards improvement, not to punish, not to penalize federations. This is the most important thing that we were trying to put forward to those national federations, both in Cyprus and in Greece. This is for improvement. This is not for penalties and punishment, right? This is important exercise for us, even introspectively, if you are a federation, right, to see how you're doing and what are the areas that you can start paying more attention and focusing on, right? Each country, Pakistan included, each federation within Pakistan, outside Pakistan, and each sport within the very same federation, right, has its own particularities. And it's always, it wasn't an easy exercise for me to put this multi-criteria analysis together, right? To offer a unified evaluation system is very, very, very hard. It can be done. Some people will see it still unfair. Some people will see it as you penalizing us by not giving us money, whereas last year we had that amount, and this year, because of the system, we have less. But if you have less, that means another federation who is doing much better in all 4 criteria will have more. And they will get more perhaps because they deserve to get more, right? So, anyway, it is a very true. And don't forget, the purpose is one and only. It is to ensure that no one is taken by surprise, and that everyone, the federation, the wider ecosystem, knows the criteria by which they will be evaluated in the coming years, and how and these criteria, the basis of the state funding that each federation will be getting. This is the purpose, not to get punished, to improve, and not to be taken by surprise, and knowing that if we do well on this, if we have some successes, if we cannot have successes because we are a small sport, because our sport is not very popular in Pakistan, etc., doesn't matter. We will try to do other things in order to make sure that we get the, as much funding from the pie as possible in order to develop the sport that we serve. And I will stop here. I hope that time-wise we're good. So there is room for some for some further clarifications from my end. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yes, Dr. Christos, it was a very powerful presentation and I learned a lot. So I will start with some questions and then we'll see if the audience has the questions as well. So my question would be, and you just pointed towards that as well, transparency. So a country like Pakistan has a lot of issues related to corruption. So how to overcome the issue of corruption through governance? From your own examples, from your work in Greece or other countries, because there is a lot of the money comes, but that will be people who are in power, they use it for giving favors or other methods to do corruption. So how to overcome that? That will be my first question. And my second question would be like Pakistan tries to compete with India, and India has recently bid for 2036 Olympics. So, do you think so that Pakistan could also think about a multi-country Olympics, such as we are having right now, multi-country FIFA World Cup as well? So, can that be a focus of Pakistan as well?
Well, starting from the second question, why not? Maybe it's not ready yet, but the purpose behind this kind of social learning, right? This is through this cluster, through this event. So we try to learn how we can improve the system. That connects with the first question of yours, Dr. Ruben, about the high levels of corruption in this wider sport ecosystem in the country. So how you can overcome all this. What I didn't have time to mention was that this plan was a kind of follow-up plan in Cyprus that, if you like, has been the result of developing the Code for Good Governance. Now, we first introduced the Code for Good Governance, and then we tried to integrate the Code for Good Governance in one of those 4 criteria, as you see, assigning 20%. Now, you talk about governance, and corruption in the country, but can we be specific? I mean, how much do we know? Can you assign a figure of national sport federations, in national sport federations, the level of corruption or the poor? Let's avoid corruption as a term. The misgovernance or the poor governance is evident. Can we have a figure? Can we measure that? There are tools out there where we can measure that. So once you measure the levels of governance, right, in the national sport federations, then you can go to them and say, you know what, this is you. This is how you behave. This is how you serve the system. This is what we did in Cyprus before we introduced the first ever Code for Good Governance. I was responsible for developing that code, back in 2017. But in order to introduce that tool, you need to measure where you are. Maybe you don't need a code at all, right? You are, in Norway they don't have a code because, governance-wise they are pretty beautiful, no issues at all, right? And Cyprus was the negative outlier actually the second negative outlier across all 20 countries examined across the world. So we went back to the Cypriot National Sport Federations and we said, you are second worst across the world. We need to do something here. But we showed them the picture of how much of improvement they need to to have when it comes to governance levels, and we legitimize the establishment, the development of the code for good governance, and once we introduce it, implement it to various degrees of explicitness, right? And then we try to connect the code with the funding, but connecting the funding only with the code for good governance was limited in scope. So we came up with this multi-criteria evaluation analysis, and we included the governance under this broader scheme, if you like. So my answer to your first question, excuse me, is that first of all, you need to measure. You need to help the federation see where they are when it comes to governance. Unless they know where they are, because I'm telling you what they tell you. Especially, even if there are board members of the federation sitting in this room now, they will tell you we do great. This is what they tell you, and I believe them. The problem with this answer is that they're not 100% certain that they're not doing that great, because they don't get help. They are very much biased, in inverted commas, in doing things, in trying to help the sport themselves, right? And they don't pay attention to the processes. And they feel that, we're developing athletes, we're taking athletes through the international competitions, we try our best, we have some successes, we have less successes, but we're trying our best. And because they're putting a lot of energy, a lot of work into getting their hands dirty in serving the sport this way, perhaps they neglect or they ignore deliberately or not deliberately some processes. And this is because sometimes the governance level standards are lower than it should be. But measurement is very, very important. That will be my answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Christmas. I guess we are over time, but if anyone in the audience have the question or any comments, we could have that.
Umar, would it be alright if I ask the question?
Can you hear me? Okay, so I have a couple of questions. One is that it is my observation that a lot of budget, when given to the federations, is spent on the, let's say, operational expenses, just like the salaries of the staff, and whatever is left is very less that can be spent on the actual athletes or development of the sports facilities, the overheads. So how do you factor in, are there any global best practices to limit that number of overheads so that the money is spent where it is intended to? And the second question is that once you are trying to fund the sports ecosystem, your objective is to win. And if I look at, there's only a lot of global competitions. The Olympic gold is the gold standard for any sports federation to have. So have you done any factoring of the probability of winning the gold? Because there are certain sports where a lot of athletes are there and there is a tough competition. And there are certain sports where there isn't much of a crowd. So have you done any probability factoring in so that we can perhaps put a little more effort or concentration there and get that gold from that bigger level of sports?
Thank you very much for your questions. These are excellent questions, as the previous ones. First of all, you are right. Some federations are, spending most of their annual budget in supporting, paying salaries or supporting the administrative staff. That relates directly to the sub-criteria of financial governance within the governance criteria that I showed you before. So the ratio there, the higher it is towards salaries, right? That will have a negative impact on the amount of money you get from the public entity that provides this state funding, right? So It's down to the federation to, if you employ, for instance, a system of like the one that I share with you, that means that it's up to you to decide how to spend the money. So, and if you show us that you spend more paying salaries, your administrative staff, and instead of doing activities or trying to develop the youth and so on and so on, then the annual budget that you will have will reflect, you know, this decision that you make. But it's up to you as a federation to decide. So all we wanna see and show you is that, okay, from the data that you provided to us in order to analyze all this, right, indicators and sub-criteria and criteria, most of the amount goes there. Do you think that it is something that you should do differently to change that in order to get more points from the other indicators, sub-criteria and criteria, so you become a healthier one? So it is down to the federations. If some federations want to spend most of the money there, so it's up to them. But I would say that it would be unfair for these federations to keep receiving the same amount of money every year, where other federations are doing differently, have putting more effort on activities, and having perhaps more athletes and clubs, having perhaps more successes, right? So it will be much more fair to allocate more money to those federations than to those who pay their administrators, you know, just to survive. So that would be my answer to the first question. Hence the need for several countries to find a more objective way to allocate this. And that particular of the several sport federations that allocating most of their funding into paying salaries, etc., etc. This is across the world. We know this. This is a universal, a global problem. That's why we try to develop tools that are more objective and fair. You know. Now, I don't think that the aim should only be getting a gold in the Olympic Games. You need to see who you are as a federation, as a sport that you serve. I mean, federation is the governing body. I mean, the sport, you know, several, I mean, there is the Winter Skiing Federation in Cyprus. Winter Skiing Federation. You know, we don't have much of snow in Cyprus. So it is, you know, obviously the success to have a gold medalist in the Winter Games in Milano Cortina next month, or the other, you know, in February is minimal. If Cyprus at all sent any athlete there, right? So it is useful to know who you are, right? And it is useful to know, okay, what are your goals, right? Your goals might be just to develop the sport within the country, right? To have as many participants as a mass, right? As many participants as possible, right? To attract athletes and young kids who are not inclined in cricket or in baseball or in soccer, in basketball and so on, right? So I wouldn't say that getting a gold medal in the highest possible competitions like the Olympic Games, it should be the only way forward. There are federations that serve certain sports that should have this goal, but not all of them. That's why we need to allow sports through their federations, right, to receive funding to develop other things, not necessarily the success criteria and the associated sub-criteria.
Thank you, Dr. Christos. We are over the time, but I will just take the last question from Ifra. Ifra is a ski athlete herself, so Ifra, can you have your question?
Yes, please. Can you hear me, Umar? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, sir, for the presentation. It gave me a lot to think about. My question is particularly related to the funding. I was wondering if the funding criteria has a lower limit for each federation. A minimum amount of money that will be given irrespective of how well the federation is doing. And secondly, considering the type of sports a federation is running, the cost to conduct the sport is going to differ vastly. If we think about skiing, it requires very heavy infrastructure, expensive equipment. It has more overhead costs for organizing competition compared to, let's say, table tennis. So, will your criteria give any weight to these costs as well?
Excellent questions, absolutely. Big yes for the second question, absolutely yes. The indicators, when it comes to the activities, there are specific indicators for equipment, for instance, for training camps outside the country, given the weather conditions. You have weighting when it comes to multi-sport within multi competitions within the very same sport. Think about, for example, the swimming. Swimming as an athlete, Phelps, I don't know, 9, 10, 11 medals, in Sydney, wherever, right? But one sport, different competitions within the very same kind of sport, right? Swimming. So there were formulas where there was calculating the weighting of these multi-competitions within the very same sport. So, as I said, I didn't have time to go into detail to the indicators, but all these matters were factoring into the overall analysis. Absolutely, absolutely. Tennis, for example, the ranking system nothing to do with pretty much all the other sports. How do you allocate funding for tennis clubs, etc., etc.? And as for the basis of the minimum amount of money given to the federations, yes, there is one. There is a minimum every federation gets, and then after this kind of amount, the better you do, the more money you get from the pie, because the pie is standard, right? Let's say 100 million in Pakistan. This is the pie, right? But the question is, how do you distribute this 100 million, right? So you can have a minimum, and then the rest becomes, the better you do across all 4 criteria, 5 criteria, depending on what plan you want to develop, you allocate accordingly. There was something else that I wanted to add, but yeah. I think pretty much. No, it was something important that I wanted to mention about the funding allocation is not coming. Don't worry. But I think the minimum, and then subject to your performance in all the other 4 criteria is the basis. And of course, there are variations based on the nature of the sport. Absolutely, yes.
Dr. Christos, again, thank you very much for your thought-provoking presentation. It was really awesome to have you. Have a really good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the invitation. Hope you find it useful, and whenever you need any help for the cluster, I'm happy to support. Absolutely, yes. Big yes. Thank you, Dr. Rivera and the others.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christos, for that powerful and insightful keynote. Can we have a huge round of applause?
Thank you. Enjoy the rest.
Thank you so much. Okay, brilliant. So now we're going to be moving forward to our panel discussion, which is such a central feature for today's seminar, where we're going to be exploring the journey from grassroots talent to Olympic level performance across governance, across talent development, marketing, and institutional support. But before that, it is an absolute honor to introduce our moderator for today. Our moderator for today is Mr. Salman Sarwar Butt, co-founder of the Pakistan Sports Knowledge Cluster and CEO of Green Peak International. A veteran figure in Pakistan's sports industry, he brings extensive management experience, strategic leadership, and industry insight. He also formerly served as the managing director of the BSL, where he played a central role in shaping professional sports development in the country. We are so privileged to have him today for today's conversation. Please take a seat. I'll now be introducing our esteemed panel. So we have a really cool selection of people here today, starting off with Mr. Arif Saeed, who graduated from the University of Oxford, where he represented University College in tennis, in squash, basketball and football at an intramural level. He later played rugby for the Lahore Rugby Football Club and was instrumental in founding the Pakistan Rugby Union in 2000. He served as its president until 2025, after which he was elected president of Pakistan's Olympic Association. He also had contributed to cricket governance as a board member of the Pakistan Cricket Board, serving from November of 2020 to January of 2023. A huge round of applause for him. Next up, we have Ms. Farkanda Jabeen, the National Sports Director at Special Olympics Pakistan, leading nationwide programs that create inclusive sports and leadership opportunities for athletes with intellectual disabilities. So she's expanded unified champion schools and advocates for a sports ecosystem that is rooted in inclusion, belonging, and empowerment. Can we please have her on stage with a huge round of applause? Next up, we have Dr. Tariq Ali, sports scientist and head of sports section at NED University of Engineering and Technology, holder of the PhD in sports science from Germany, a former international high jump champion, postdoctoral researcher at ULM University, and an IAAF certified coach. He brings elite athlete experience with cutting-edge performance science. Sir, can we please have you on stage? Next up, joining us virtually is Ms. Ifra Wali, so a fellow at the Weatherhead Center of International Affairs at Harvard University, Vice President of the Gilgit-Baltistan Winter Sports Association, Executive Member of the Winter Sports Federation Pakistan, and Pakistan's first South Asian Winter Games gold medalist. A pride of Pakistan recipient, she continues to elevate Pakistan's presence in winter sports globally. Can we please cheer her on, even though she's here virtually? And finally, we have Ms. Kishmala Talab, Pakistan's first female Olympic shooter to qualify directly for the Olympics. Bronze medalist at the Asian Games, silver medalist at the Asian Championships, and mixed team medalist with teammate Gulfam Joseph. A trailblazer defining Pakistan's presence in global shooting sports. We're so honored to have you here today. I'm now going to hand over the conversation to our moderator to lead this discussion.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum to everyone, and assalamu alaikum to our esteemed panelists here. I'm quite nervous sitting amongst all of you. You've done some wonderful work. और बहुत सारे सवाल हैं जो कि I'm sure एक घंटे में we try our best to cover. But मैं पहले आपसे ये सवाल पूछना चाहूँगा. You know, we heard Dr. Christos speak about his criteria of how federations can be looked at, sports needs to be looked at, how it should be funded and how it should be developed. So before we get to the question of from playground to podium, what are your thoughts on federations in Pakistan and how sports is being developed, how it is being nurtured? Where do you see us as we stand today? Future ki baat mein baat karenge, but where do you see us as we stand today? So I'd like to hear your perspectives on this. So shall we start, Arif, with you?
Great honor to be here at the IBA, and it's amazing pleasure and what results it brings. So, but let me start with a 1-minute introduction of my role in a federation. So, only 2 Olympic sports have joined the Pakistan Olympic Association in the last maybe 25 or 30 years. One of them was last year, which was fencing. The other one was rugby. So my association started, so I actually did try to update rugby in Oxford because they did not. I played a year before that, freshman year in the US. When I got to Oxford, we found out that out of the 15 who represent the university, 11 were internationals. There were some South Africans who could not be internationals because they were banned. And out of the 15 university players, 5 were in my college, and there were 30 colleges. So my life passion has been developing already, and I had to found a federation as its secretary. I was secretary for more than 8 years, but then we got maybe 16 years. I don't remember exactly. We were founded in 2000, so 16 years before we got the rule of limit, which we imposed on ourselves. Then I was the president for 8 years, and now I have a titular position. I'm the chairman of the European. Oh, we've started from drawing lines, refereeing games, coaching, running a club, finding funding, getting approved by 4 provinces, getting rugby established in 3 departments. Now I think it's extended to 5. So running youth programs, running women's programs, running league programs. So I'm very familiar with this story about federations and their relationship with the government. The money that the sports board gives to the Pakistan Rugby Union represents maybe 3% of its total revenue or expenditure. And for the 3 years that we weren't given anything, I think we got better off because the reporting system is cumbersome. We have people dealing with it, but it's meaningless. The amounts mentioned by our keynote speaker are nominal amounts. They don't really result in anything. I've just come from 3 trips to 2 games where Pakistan squad was playing in Bahrain for the Asian Youth Games and in Riyadh for the Islamic Solidarity Games. So in one of them, I will not mention which one, the opening ceremony cost 11 million euros. So we're talking about a different scale of operations here. And the sports board allocates money based on what is available to them and largely based on lobbying efforts that you make use of. But where does the other 97% come from? In a number of federations which are affiliated globally, they get serious grants or reasonable grants. In our case, that's World Rugby. And the World Rugby system works as follows. For the first 3 years, they don't give you any cash. They give you things in kind. You can get a coach, you can get rugby balls, you can get a basic training kit. I think that's good to establish a level of activity in a federation. And then, now we're at a much more advanced state. We're put in different development bands. And I think our questionnaire is probably 60 questions long. We fill it in. We have a meeting with the regional development officer who looks at it, and on a few things he will say, these things are completely out of proportion. Even Japan doesn't have it. So there are systems that we are used to doing. But my theory and my philosophy has always been that fundamentally it's the job of the federation to make sure it earns its keep. And in my recent stint on my first and perhaps only term in the Olympic Association, we have started inviting federations to talk to us, to give us a presentation. And the first 2 were table tennis and rugby. And we speak to them in very simple terms. So we talk to them about 3 buckets: youth, women, and elite sports. And then we talk about 4 strands of expertise. There is match officials or refereeing, there is coaching, there is medical, and there is playing. And then again in playing we have several angles to do this. So I am, while we are never satisfied, I'm quite proud of what the Pakistan Rugby Union has done. So I'm just going to share a couple of glimpses to explain how we evaluate ourselves. And then, of course, you have so many other panelists who have valuable input. So we, at one stage, were number 1 in Asia in a program called Get Into Rugby, getting new men and women, girls and boys into rugby. So in our biggest year, we put 127,000 new children, young people through the sport. The year before was 67,000, and these are not cumulative figures. Those 67,000 don't get to be counted. And each session is recorded and or photographed, so you can actually pick up 127,000 people. So we were reporting into a Asia 1 million project in advance of the Japan World Cup. The number of female participants was over 35%. And I think we put to bed several presuppositions about women's ability or incentive or propensity to join a sport like rugby. So we got the women's team traveling abroad to participate. And so what the keynote speaker said, and I'm trying to memorize his last name so that we would call him Dr. Christos, but he said, there is a multi-criteria analysis that you have to do for each federation. But in Pakistan, I have been a proponent of federations standing up, taking responsibility. If after 10 years you're going to say the government is not funding us enough, I think it's time for you to give way to somebody that raises funds independent. So
first of all, I'm really thankful and feel honored to so many wonderful people. And among your, about your question that were released and, in terms of federation support and all. So my view on sports development in federations has, evolved from being a player, then manager, and then now here at Special Olympics. So I think like it requires not just a top bottom view but also a bottom up view of how things operate. And and now taking it a deeper look at this multi-criteria analysis, I think it's more important than ever that we have a and federations can they have a very good opportunity to take responsibility to have a closer look on the road talent and the youth sports, how things can grow from the grassroots level. Maybe I think for some amount of time things have been spiraling up at the like top level and then there is no way down. So there are no formal pathways maybe structured in a way that can shape a journey from for a very young player to of any sports, and especially the sports which are not which are weaker comparatively to other sports. And then it, maybe if the federation doesn't completely own it, they may collaborate with universities, with the schools, and there are so many youth leagues coming up at the